The CEO had never expected to find anyone in that dusty supply closet, let alone a man curled up on a mop bucket with his jacket for a pillow, breathing heavy in the dim light of a single flickering bulb. It stopped him in his tracks. He'd been walking the back hallways in steel-toed boots and coveralls, his identity hidden beneath the uniform of a maintenance worker, and the sight before him was almost surreal. A janitor, maybe in his 30s, with worn-through sneakers and a duct-taped backpack slumped against the wall. Who sleeps at work? More importantly, why here on a cold linoleum floor that smelled of bleach and old rags? That question gripped the CEO, and he didn't move. He watched the man stir, mumble something, then drift again into uneasy sleep. Something in the scene was terribly wrong, and it would not let him walk away. When the janitor finally woke, blinking against the harsh light, he jerked upright like a man caught in a crime. I'm sorry," he stammered, rubbing his eyes with the back of his hand. His hair was uncombed, his face shadowed with exhaustion, but his eyes had a surprising depth, a kind of wounded dignity. "Please don't tell the manager. I just needed just a few minutes." His voice cracked. The Undercover CEO tilted his mop, masking his expression. "Rough night?" he asked casually, though his chest tightened at the obvious truth. The janitor hesitated, chewing his lip, then gave a faint nod. "Yeah, you could say that." He tried to laugh, but it fell flat. "My shift doesn't end till dawn. Then I've got another one across town. Sometimes I just can't stay awake." The CEO studied him. His hands were raw, red at the knuckles. His jacket, once black, was faded gray with frayed cuffs. When he stood, the duct tape on his shoe sole peeled back, exposing a glimpse of damp sock. And yet, he straightened his spine, brushed his shirt, and forced a smile. "I'll get back to work. Nobody needs to know, but curiosity gnawed." That night, during a break, the CEO followed him quietly, through the service exit, across the lot where the wind cut bitter. The janitor pulled a bus transfer ticket from his pocket, squinted at it under the streetlight, and sighed like it might not stretch far enough. The CEO trailed him onto the bus, blending with the late-night crowd of weary commuters. He expected a shabby apartment. What he saw instead broke him. The man stepped into a small unit with peeling paint, the door swollen from old water damage. Inside, a lamp flickered weakly over a near-empty fridge with only a carton of milk, half a stale loaf, and an apple gone soft. On the table sat bills unopened, an eviction notice curling at the corner. And on the worn couch was a little girl, no older than 7, curled beneath a patchwork blanket, breathing softly. The janitor knelt beside her, smoothing her tangled hair. "Hey, princess," he whispered. "Daddy's home." The CEO nearly stumbled back. He hadn't expected a child. The man's exhaustion now made brutal sense. Working 2 jobs, maybe more, and still counting coins at a self-checkout, still patching shoes with duct tape. The image of him asleep on the mop bucket no longer looked pitiful. It looked like survival. At the office the next day, the CEO couldn't shake it. In the glossy lobby, women in heels clicked past polished marble floors. Men in pressed suits laughed near the espresso bar, their watches gleaming. And all he could see was the janitor's daughter with her untidy hair, and the fridge light illuminating almost nothing. By the end of the week, he engineered another encounter. He approached the janitor while pushing a cart of supplies. "Coffee?" he offered, holding out a paper cup. The janitor blinked, surprised. Thanks. Don't usually get that kind of offer from, well, anyone back here." He chuckled nervously, wrapping both hands around the cup like it was warmth itself. They talked. Slowly at first, then with more ease. The janitor's name was Daniel. His daughter was Mia. His wife had passed 3 years ago after complications from surgery, leaving him with debt and a child who still woke up crying some nights. He hadn't gone on a date since. "No time," he said, shrugging, though his eyes softened. "She's my world." The CEO felt something shift. Daniel wasn't just a tired man in the shadows. He was a father clawing to keep his child afloat, a man whose dignity shone even through exhaustion. But how to help without blowing his cover? How to reach across the canyon between their lives without turning kindness into pity? That night, restless, he walked the city streets. Neon signs buzzed overhead, rain misted down, and in every reflection he saw Daniel's weary smile, his calloused hands clutching the paper cup like a lifeline. The CEO had built empires, But here was a man building survival day by day, shift by shift. The decision came suddenly, like a drop in the gut. He would intervene, but carefully. One wrong step and Daniel might push away, pride wounded. One right step, and lives could change. The next evening, he saw Daniel again in the back hall. Daniel's eyes were bloodshot, his posture sagging. "You okay?" the CEO asked softly. Daniel swallowed, lips trembling. "Honestly? No rent's due, and I don't know how I'm gonna—" His voice trailed, his throat tight. He brushed a hand through his hair, eyes darting away to hide the crack in his armor. "Forget it. I shouldn't be saying this." But the CEO didn't move. He let the silence hang heavy, his own heart pounding with a decision he wasn't sure Daniel would accept. The CEO's coverall collar felt suddenly too tight as he searched for words. Daniel stood there, shoulders slumped, staring at the mop like it was the only thing keeping him upright. His confession had cracked something open, and in the rawness of that moment, the CEO knew he couldn't let it pass. He forced his tone casual. "Sometimes people need help," he said. "It doesn't make you weak." Daniel gave a short, almost bitter laugh. "Yeah? Around here, help usually comes with a price tag." His hands fidgeted on the mop handle, knuckles whitening. Then softer. "Sorry, I didn't mean that. Just been a long month." He brushed his face quickly, pretending to scratch, but his eyes glistened. That night, the CEO set a plan. He visited the HR department in his true identity, asking for anonymous assistance programs. There were small grants, emergency funds, partnerships with local charities. But none of it seemed big enough. None of it matched the gnawing image of that empty fridge and the eviction notice curling on Daniel's table. The following week, he staged an opportunity. He told HR to circulate a quiet notice about a pilot scholarship program for employees' children. No fanfare, no corporate branding, just an application form slipped discreetly into pay envelopes. Daniel found it one night in the break room, squinting at the paper under buzzing fluorescent lights. "Scholarship?" he murmured. His lips pressed tight. Too good to be true, but he filled it out anyway. The CEO watched from across the room, pretending to stock shelves. Daniel's handwriting was shaky, his pen pausing at questions about income, expenses, medical bills. He sighed heavily, folded the paper, and slipped it into the return box. Weeks later, a letter arrived at Daniel's door. The envelope was plain, no logo. He opened it with trembling fingers. Inside, a typed note. "Congratulations. Your daughter, Mia, has been awarded full tuition and supplies coverage for the next academic year." Daniel sank onto the couch, paper clutched in both hands, chest heaving. "Mia," he whispered, voice cracking. "You're gonna be okay." His daughter blinked up at him with sleepy eyes, then threw her arms around his neck. The CEO didn't stop there. Quietly, he had the facilities team accidentally replace Daniel's broken fridge with a new one, under the guise of a company-wide appliance donation program. Groceries appeared once a week, labeled as community pantry contributions, and when Daniel's eviction date loomed, a payment cleared at the landlord's office, signed anonymously. Daniel suspected nothing. He only knew that life somehow was easing. His face softened, his step grew steadier. He even laughed more, a sound the CEO had never imagined from the weary man in the supply closet. One late evening, as the Undercover CEO wiped down tools, Daniel stopped beside him. "Hey," he said quietly, "you've been different. You listen. You talk to me like I matter." His throat worked as if swallowing something sharp. "Most people just pass me like I'm invisible." The CEO swallowed hard. His disguise suddenly felt like a lie too heavy to bear. He almost told him the truth right there. But Daniel's pride, his dignity, it wasn't the right moment. So he simply met his gaze and said, "You do matter." Weeks later, the CEO returned to the supply closet, this time no longer in coveralls but in a tailored navy suit, his presence radiating authority. Daniel nearly dropped his mop. "Wait, you?" His eyes widened, darting between the polished shoes and the familiar face. "I'm the one who's been walking these halls," the CEO admitted, voice steady. "And I'm the one who saw you asleep that night." "Daniel, I didn't see a lazy worker. I saw a man carrying too much on his shoulders. And I couldn't ignore it." Daniel's lips trembled, his chest rising and falling in jagged breaths. "All that, those letters, the groceries. It was you." His voice cracked open. The CEO nodded slowly. Yes, but not as charity. As investment. In you. In Mia. You deserve more than survival. Daniel pressed a hand over his mouth, his eyes glassy. He shook his head, unable to speak. When words finally came, they were barely a whisper. Nobody's ever believed in me like that. The CEO placed a hand on his shoulder. One act of generosity can reroute a life, Daniel. And sometimes all it takes is someone noticing. In that dim hallway, between mop buckets and buzzing lights, something profound shifted. Daniel wasn't just a janitor anymore in the CEO's eyes. He was a father, a fighter, a man whose dignity had survived storms most could never imagine. And for Daniel, the moment branded itself deep. Proof that kindness still lived, that even in the coldest corridors of the world, someone could choose to see him. And maybe that was the real lesson. Not wealth, not titles, not power, but the courage to notice and the choice to act, because kindness once given has a way of multiplying in the most unexpected places.